I was rinsing my coffee mug when my phone lit up. It was Chelsea. I hesitated for a moment. Ever since she married my brother Nathan, her name on my screen had been more of a warning than a welcome. Still, I answered. Her voice was sweet, syrupy almost, but underneath it was something cold. "Isabel," she said, dragging out the syllables like they amused her. "I figured you should know. I used your college fund to buy our new house." I stopped mid-motion, my hand tightening around the mug. "You what?" I asked quietly. Chelsea laughed. "Oh, come on. You weren't actually going to use it, were you? Be real. You're in your 30s, working a stable job. That doctor thing was always just a dream. Time to grow up." Her words didn't even sting. They didn't land because I already knew. I leaned against the counter, staring at the quiet, snow-covered street outside. "How exactly did you manage that?" I asked, my voice calm, too calm, and that seemed to throw her off for half a second. "It was easy," she said. "Nathan still had access to the fund from when your grandparents first set it up, remember? All I needed was his signature. The house is gorgeous, by the way. You should come see it sometime. Oh, wait, you probably wouldn't want to. Too many reminders of what you gave up." I pictured her standing in some marble foyer, admiring her own reflection, probably wearing those painfully fake Louboutins and thinking they made her someone important. She expected me to scream, to cry, to beg her to give it back. Instead, I said, "Well, thanks for letting me know, Chelsea. I hope the foundation holds." There was a pause, followed by her voice rising just slightly. "That's it? No reaction? No breakdown? Where's the drama, Isabel?" I ended the call. The silence that followed was thick, not heavy with sadness, but with purpose. I walked into my study, opened my laptop, and pulled up an email. There it was, the confirmation I'd been waiting for. My attorney had already locked the fund 2 weeks ago, rerouting it into a secure account I'd set up under my name only. Chelsea had tried and failed, and every step of her attempt had been documented. My grandmother always said, "Don't just trust people, trust their patterns, and protect your future like it's your life." Grandma Edith wasn't just wise, she was battle-tested. She built a medical nonprofit during a time when women weren't even allowed in some hospital boards. She knew what it was like to have your dreams dismissed, and she taught me how to guard mine. I'd seen this coming the moment Chelsea walked into our family 6 months ago, glittering in designer knockoffs and promises. 2 weeks after meeting Nathan, she had him proposing in front of all of us at Sunday dinner, holding a ring that looked far more expensive than anything his paycheck could justify. By week 3, she was already sitting next to my father at the fireplace, asking softly about that education fund Isabel never used. By week 4, she had memorized the account number. She underestimated me. That was her first mistake, because I hadn't let that money sit unprotected all these years. I'd moved it strategically. I'd run audits on it annually, just like Grandma taught me. And the moment Chelsea started showing too much interest, I'd contacted Marissa, our family's old estate lawyer, now one of the top asset protection attorneys in Minnesota. "Document everything," Marissa had said. "Every call, every question, every signature. People like her don't stop until you make them." And so I did. Now I stood at my window, watching the snow fall gently across the city. Somewhere out in Edina, Chelsea was unpacking boxes in a house she thought she owned, bought with money she thought she'd stolen. She had no idea she'd just stepped into a legal minefield. Friday was the deadline the realtor had set. For days left, and Chelsea, bless her clueless heart, was about to learn just how far I'd go to defend the life my grandmother believed I deserved. It started at Thanksgiving dinner. Chelsea had only been in our lives for a few weeks, but already she was talking like she belonged. She sat at the head of the table, not Nathan, who had always carved the turkey, but Chelsea, dressed in a tight beige jumpsuit that looked more appropriate for a cocktail lounge than a family gathering. She laughed too loudly, complimented my mother's mashed potatoes with a condescending, "This is so quaint," and spent most of the meal subtly steering the conversation toward her favorite topic, money. At first, I thought I was imagining it. The way she glanced at me when Grandma Edith's name came up. The way her eyes lit up when Nathan mentioned that our grandmother had left behind something substantial for my education. But then she asked the question I'd been dreading. "So, Isabel," she said, dabbing at the corner of her lip with a napkin, "that education fund, what's happening with it these days? You ever going to use it, or are you just letting it sit there?" The table went quiet. I smiled. "I'm still planning on going back to school." Chelsea tilted her head. "Really? At your age?" My mother cleared her throat. Nathan looked uncomfortable. I didn't flinch. "Really," I said. "My age is perfect for focus." Chelsea laughed like it was a joke, but her eyes didn't smile. That night, I pulled out the old file folder labeled Trust Fund Documents. My grandmother had started the fund when I was 13, with the expressed intent that it was only to be used for medical school. She'd left me detailed instructions, which banks were trustworthy, who to call if anything felt off, where to find the passwords she'd encoded in her letters. I sat in bed until midnight, rereading her last handwritten note. "You are my wild card, Isabel. You see things before others do. You don't shout to be heard, you wait. You calculate. And when you move, it's with purpose. Use that, especially when others underestimate you." Chelsea was already showing her cards. Over the next few weeks, she became bolder. She began asking Nathan about joint accounts, insisting that married couples should share everything. I overheard her once in the hallway, speaking softly to someone on the phone. "I'll find out how much is left in it, don't worry." That same day, I called Marissa. "Something's coming," I told her. She didn't question me, just asked for copies of every financial document linked to the fund. Within 48 hours, she had flagged 2 login attempts from a device not registered under my name. One from Chelsea's IP address, the other from Nathan's office. Chelsea was trying to map the system before she made her move, so we made ours first. We moved the funds $800,000 into a trust-controlled, encrypted account that required 2-factor authentication and biometric verification. Not even Nathan could access it anymore. Then we sat back and waited. I watched Chelsea parade around at family gatherings, calling herself Mrs. Grant like it was some royal title. She bragged about how she and Nathan were shopping for a house, even though neither of them had the credit score for a mortgage that size. She started visiting open houses in Edina, telling the realtors her husband's family had it covered. It was like watching a bird build a nest out of stolen string. But I said nothing. Every time she leaned across the table and smirked at me, thinking she was winning, I thought about Grandma Edith, about how she'd taught me not to fight fire with fire. "Let them think they're clever," she'd said once. "The smarter ones never need to yell. They just turn the lock behind them and let the fools walk into the trap." Chelsea was already halfway in. Thursday morning, 7:18 a.m. My phone buzzed with a string of messages. "Chelsea, the wire didn't go through. Did you change something?" "Chelsea, Isabel, be reasonable." "Chelsea, the bank said there's an issue. You need to call them." "Chelsea, we need that money today." I took another sip of coffee, watching the snow collect in soft layers on the windowsill. I didn't respond. I didn't even flinch. Let her spiral. Let the silence answer for me. At 8:02, Nathan chimed in. His tone was softer, apologetic. "Nathan, hey Iz, I know it's a lot to ask, but you've got a great job, right? You're stable. Amanda and I, we just need this house. It's for our future. Family helps family, right? Family helps family." I stared at those words for a long time. Where was that sentiment when Grandma Edith was in hospice and I was the only one taking care of her every weekend? Where was that loyalty when I was juggling 2 jobs to save the trust fund from bad investments after the market crashed. I never asked them for help. Never even hinted. I protected that fund like it was a living thing because to me it was hope. It was my second chance. It was the only part of me I hadn't sacrificed for other people's comfort. I typed out a response, then deleted it, let them figure it out on their own. Instead, I opened my email. There it was, a confirmation from the University of Minnesota Medical School. Interview scheduled. Wednesday, 10 a.m. I had already completed my prerequisite courses online over the past 4 years. Late at night, after work, after everyone else in my life had stopped believing I would ever go back. I whispered it aloud to myself, just to hear it in the air. Dr. Isabel Grant. Chelsea thought she'd shut a door. She had no idea she'd just slammed herself inside one. The best part was that she had no clue what was coming. She still believed she could pressure me, manipulate Nathan, bully her way into my future. She thought my silence was weakness. She thought I was too soft, too quiet, too polite to fight back. But that wasn't silence. That was strategy. Marissa had already compiled a full packet. Timestamps of unauthorized login attempts, audio recordings of Chelsea impersonating me on calls to the bank, even a preliminary handwriting analysis proving Nathan's signature on the forged transfer request didn't match any of his known documents. All we had to do now was wait. Friday was the deadline the realtor had set. They were supposed to close on the house at noon. Chelsea was expecting a transfer of $800,000 to land in her escrow account. Instead, she'd be receiving a cease and desist letter and possibly a subpoena. I stood up and opened the blinds. Below me, the city of Minneapolis was beginning to stir, commuters trudging through snowbanks, steam rising from manhole covers, headlights glowing in the fog. Life was moving forward, and so was I. Chelsea could have left me alone. She could have respected my boundaries. She could have asked, but she didn't. She saw something I had, something valuable, something she didn't earn, and instead of building something of her own, she decided to steal mine. Now all that was left was to let her fall into the very hole she dug. Friday, 11:41 a.m. The sky over Edina was a flat, iron-gray sheet. Snow clung to the edges of driveways like old regrets, refusing to melt. I parked across the street from Nathan and Chelsea's new dream house and sat for a moment watching the front door. It was wide open. They were expecting money. Instead, they were getting me. Inside, the place looked like a showroom, cold, curated hollow. Marble floors, crystal light fixtures, an oversized mirror that took up half the foyer wall. Chelsea stood in front of it, checking her reflection with a shaky hand. Nathan sat on the edge of their new sectional, bouncing one leg, chewing the inside of his cheek. When they saw me, they both stood. "Isabel," Nathan said, relief flashing across his face. "Thank God. There's been a problem with the transfer." "There hasn't," I cut in. I walked past them, straight to the kitchen island, and opened my laptop. "You just never had access." Chelsea folded her arms. "What are you doing?" I turned the screen to face them and clicked open the file Marissa had labeled Attempted Fraud Grant Trust. The first page displayed 2 signature comparisons, one authentic, one doctored. Nathan squinted. "What is this?" I looked at him. "That's not your signature. That's hers." Chelsea scoffed. "You're insane." "The bank's fraud team disagrees," I said calmly. "They flagged it instantly. And they recorded a call placed from your number. Chelsea, one where you pretended to be me. VoicePrint software caught the discrepancy." She went pale. Nathan stepped forward, looking from the screen to her, then back. "Wait, what is this?" "I'll explain," she snapped. "No," I said, my voice sharper now. "You won't, because we're just getting started." I flipped to the next document, a credit report Marissa had pulled. 3 maxed-out credit cards, 2 personal loans, $18,000 in withdrawals from the Golden Palace Casino in the last 2 months. That's where the money was really going, wasn't it, Chelsea? Not to your dream house. Not to our future. Just your next bet. Chelsea's eyes darted. You had no right to look into my finances. You had no right to forge my brother's name, I snapped. You had no right to touch a single cent of what my grandmother left behind. Nathan turned to her, his voice small. Chelsea, is this true? It's not what you think, she said quickly. I had a system. I was going to win it all back. I just needed a boost. The house was part of the plan. We'd refinance later, it would cover everything. You don't understand, I was doing this for us. Nathan stared at her, like he didn't recognize the person in front of him. I opened one more file. This one a string of text messages between Chelsea and a friend named Lila. In them, she bragged about marrying into a family with money, about accessing the trust before the idiot sister figured it out. Her words, not mine. Nathan read them in silence, his shoulders slowly curling forward. When he finally spoke, it was barely more than a whisper. Get out. Chelsea blinked. What? Get out. His voice cracked. You tried to steal from my sister. You lied to me. You forged my name. You gambled away our savings. Baby, she pleaded, stepping forward. Get out, Chelsea, he roared. She flinched. Mascara streaked down her cheeks as she grabbed her purse and stormed past me. At the door, she turned and hissed. You think this is over? I always land on my feet. I didn't reply. I just watched the door slam shut behind her. Nathan sat down heavily on the couch, burying his face in his hands. I'm so sorry, Iz. I should have listened when you said something felt off. I wanted to believe someone could love me that much, that quickly. I pulled an envelope from my bag and handed it to him. What's this? Contact information for a divorce lawyer, and all the documentation you'll need to protect yourself. He opened it slowly, his hands trembling. Page after page of damning evidence. His face hardened with every line. She never loved me, did she? I looked at him gently. No, but that's not your fault. She's done this before. You were just the next target. He looked up. What do we do now? I closed the laptop. Now, I said, we press charges. Nathan stared at the floor like he was trying to find solid ground beneath him, but everything had already cracked. He didn't cry. Not yet. His silence was heavier than tears. I sat beside him, letting the weight of what had just happened settle into the walls. I should have known, he whispered. No, I said quietly. She's good at this. Too good. He looked at me, eyes rimmed red. What do you mean? I opened my laptop one last time and pulled up the final document in the folder. 3 years ago, a man named Jordan Callahan filed a police report in Austin, Texas. His wife had disappeared with over $300,000 from his business accounts. Same MO, fast romance, quick marriage, sudden joint access to finances, and then gone. Her name then was Anna Wells. Nathan blinked. That's Chelsea. It was Chelsea before that, and Amanda Wilson before that. Different names, same story. Different men, same ending. I handed him a printed report. They couldn't press charges in time. She vanished before they gathered enough evidence. Changed her name, moved states, started over. Nathan covered his face. God, I let him process it in silence. The truth needed time to soak through. I'd been there before, when I found out our mother had lied to us for years about Dad's pension. That kind of betrayal doesn't just hurt. It rearranges the furniture in your soul. Suddenly, you don't trust the floor beneath your feet. She targeted you, I said, voice low. She asked about the trust fund on your second date. She told Lila, her friend, that she had found a golden goose. You weren't her husband, Nathan. You were a plan. He sat still for a moment, then nodded slowly. Press charges, he said. I'll testify. Give them everything. I reached into my bag and handed him a USB. Everything's already organized. Marissa's ready to go. But you need to protect yourself, too. There's a freeze on joint accounts, and we've flagged all recent transactions to offshore banking routes. There's still time to reverse some of it. He took the USB with both hands, as if it might fall apart. I'm sorry, Isabel, he said again, his voice shaking. I was supposed to protect you. Not this. I smiled gently. You protected me enough when we were kids. Now it's my turn. My phone buzzed. A message from Marissa. Chelsea's previous victims are ready to talk. We can move forward. I looked at Nathan. We're not the only ones. Jordan's family, another woman from Chicago, and a retired teacher in New Jersey. They all have evidence. They all want justice. His jaw tightened. Then let's give it to them. And just like that, the soft, timid man who once blindly believed in love began to disappear. In his place was someone who had seen the edge of destruction and stepped back. I stood to leave, packing my laptop as I did. You really going to medical school? He asked suddenly. I turned to him, meeting his eyes. Yes, I said. Interviews next week. Grandma left that money for a reason. I'm not wasting it. He nodded, swallowing hard. She'd be proud of you. I smiled. She'd be proud of you, too, for finally seeing the truth. Outside, the clouds had begun to part. The snow was still thick, but sunlight broke through like a promise. Chelsea might have believed she could write the ending of this story, but what she didn't know was I'd already written the next chapter. The courthouse smelled like old paper and freshly brewed coffee. The walls echoed with footsteps and the low murmur of strangers. I stood in the hallway just outside courtroom 4B, wearing my white coat for the first time. Not for the court, but for myself. I'd just come from my medical school orientation. My ID badge still clipped to my collar. Isabel Grant, first-year student, University of Minnesota Medical School. It felt surreal, and yet entirely right. Ready? Nathan asked, appearing beside me. His suit was neat but borrowed, his face thinner but sharper. In the weeks since Chelsea walked out of that dream house, he'd become a different man, more grounded, more focused. The shadows under his eyes were still there, but they were no longer from denial. They were from resolve. I am said. We stepped into the courtroom together, and it took my breath away. There weren't just two of us. There were five. 5 victims. 5 families. All seated in the same pews. All with thick folders and tired eyes. Jordan Callahan, from Texas, sat at the front, his jaw clenched. Beside him, a retired teacher from New Jersey. Behind her, a woman who used to be a nurse, until Chelsea had drained her savings account and vanished. Each of them had a story. Each of them thought they were alone. Until now, Chelsea was brought in by 2 officers, shackled at the wrists. Gone was the curated glamour. No designer heels, no false lashes, no smug smile. Her hair was flat, her jumpsuit beige. Her eyes flicked around the courtroom and stopped when she saw the others. She hadn't expected them. She hadn't expected us. Her jaw tightened. That flicker of recognition in her eyes. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. She was already trying to pivot her story to find an angle. It was too late. The judge entered. The clerk called the case. The courtroom settled. Marissa stood to speak first. Calm, precise, relentless. She laid out the pattern. For different aliases, for stolen identities, nearly $1 million across 5 states. Bank statements, forged documents, voicemails, witness testimony. When it was Nathan's turn, he walked to the stand slowly, deliberately. His voice cracked once, but he never looked away from Chelsea. She made me believe I'd found something real, he said. She made me believe we were building a future together. But really, she was just dismantling mine behind my back. The money she tried to take wasn't just cash. It was the legacy my grandmother left for my sister. It was years of sacrifice. It was a future in medicine. Chelsea didn't just steal money. She tried to steal hope. I squeezed his hand when he returned. He sat with a quiet strength I hadn't seen in years. Then it was my turn. I stood and faced the judge. My grandmother raised me to protect what matters, not with aggression, but with intelligence. She left that fund for a reason, and I guarded it because I believed in the dream she had for me. Chelsea tried to steal that, not because she needed it, but because she thought I wouldn't notice. Today isn't about revenge. It's about making sure she never gets to do this to anyone else again. The judge was silent for a moment. Then he read the verdict. Chelsea Monroe, also known as Anna Wells, Amanda Wilson, and Amy Walker, this court finds you guilty on all counts: fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to defraud, and attempted grand larceny. You are hereby sentenced to 5 years in state prison, with restitution to be paid to all named victims. No possibility of parole. Chelsea's mask cracked. As the bailiff stepped toward her, she turned toward me, venom in her voice. You think this changes anything? You're not a doctor. You're a pathetic little accountant, playing dress-up. You'll fail. You'll break. I'll be out before you finish your first year. I met her eyes. I didn't blink. Actually, I said quietly, I start next month. And thanks to you, I've never been more sure of who I am. She laughed bitterly, but it had no teeth. They led her away, her shoulders squared like she still believed she had a final card to play. She didn't. Nathan looked at me as the room emptied. I found the ring, he said. The one I spent 3 months' salary on. It's fake, just like everything else about her. I took a deep breath. Sell it, I told him. Use the money to start over. Turn one more piece of her lies into something useful. He paused, then reached into his pocket and handed it to me. No, he said. I want you to have it. Sell it. Add it to your fund. Use it for something real. That evening, I sat at my desk in my apartment in Minneapolis, the city lights twinkling beyond the window like quiet witnesses to everything that had happened. My white coat was draped over the back of the chair. On the desk, 3 things sat side by side: the acceptance letter from medical school, the latest bank statement from my secured education fund, and the ring. It glinted under the desk lamp, gaudy and hollow. Chelsea's final illusion. A piece of glass she'd passed off as love. I picked it up, turned it slowly in my fingers, and smiled. It would go to a local scholarship foundation in Grandma's name. Let one of her lies become someone else's beginning. My phone buzzed. It was Nathan. Thank you for not giving up on me, for protecting what matters, for showing me the truth, even when I didn't want to see it. I typed back, we protect each other. Always. He'd filed for divorce the day after the verdict. The process had moved quickly. Chelsea's prior frauds had left a trail too wide to hide. With her conviction, everything she'd built on deception began to crumble. The bank froze her remaining assets. Her aliases were flagged in every national system, and the families she'd hurt were no longer alone. Justice didn't erase the damage, but it marked a beginning. The next morning, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, adjusting my white coat. For once, I didn't see the tired accountant who'd spent a decade sacrificing, waiting, second-guessing. I saw someone ready, someone unshakable. Dr. Isabel Grant, student, survivor, and granddaughter of the woman who taught me that silence doesn't mean surrender, and that kindness doesn't mean weakness. Nathan was already waiting at the courthouse entrance. His posture straighter now, his eyes clearer. You sure you want to do this? He asked. I'm not here for her, I said. I'm here for me, and for everyone who thought their voice wouldn't matter. Inside, we weren't alone. The courtroom was packed. The other families were there, too. Chelsea sat in her orange jumpsuit, face blank now, drained of that smug superiority. But when the evidence replayed, when each voice told the same story of trust broken, of lives unraveled, her composure cracked. She wasn't special. She wasn't untouchable. And she wasn't going to do this again. The judge's final order was clear. 5 years. No early release. Restitution. Public record across all states. Her freedom ended where our stories began. As we stepped outside, the winter sun peeked through the clouds. Nathan turned to me. "So, doctor?" "Not yet," I said, "but I'm on my way." He smiled. For the first time in a long time it reached his eyes. She'd be proud, you know. Grandma. I looked up, letting the cold wind sting my face, letting the memory of Edith Grant settle in my chest like fire. She would, I said, not just because I fought back, but because I didn't let her legacy die in silence. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone who tried to break you. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be. And I would become it all. Not in spite of Chelsea, but because of her.